guys. Hello. Alright, we're talking about quotes so perfect because we're going to take the opposite context today. I hope you all are okay with that, but this wonderful quote is, "The world is full of fools, and he who would not see it should live alone and smash his mirror." This is an anonymous quote, but it comes later as an adaptation from an original attribution from an original form attributed to Claude Le Petit, 1640 to 1665, in Discours Satriques, 1686. Okay, that's the quote that I had written down. The world is full of fools, and he who would not see it should live alone and smash his mirror. As true as this might be, right, we are going to take the opposite context, and we are going to be speaking about wisdom. The Solomon, right, the young King Solomon, actually admits his foolishness. He admits, he does not have the knowledge and the wisdom that he would like. So what does he do? He asks God for that. He asks God for discernment, right? And with that, God gives him wisdom and more than he asked for. As we remember this narrative, I think as we read through it, you'll start to remember the story. There's a few little pieces in here. We're also going to talk about the wisdom behind collaboration, because that is also included in here. And let's go ahead and begin. I'm a little bit short on time. I have something to do this morning. So without further ado, chapter 3 starts with, Solomon made an alliance with Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and married his daughter. He brought her to the city of David until he finished building his palace and temple of the Lord and the wall around Jerusalem. Wonderful. So a first alliance, right? A first partnership with the king of Egypt, Pharaoh. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon during the night in a dream, and God asked, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." And he says, "Now, Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David, but I am only a little child, and I do not know how to carry out my duties. So give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. For who is able to govern this great people of yours?" All right. So I did mention this, all right. He is a young child. I mentioned this. When he became king, he's purely an adolescent. He doesn't have all of the knowledge and the wisdom that he would like. So without asking for wealth, which the Lord was pleased with, without asking for wealth, without asking for a long reign or any obscene power, he simply asked God for a heart of discernment and a heart of wisdom, right, to govern his people. So who is able to establish that? The Lord, of course. And who is he asking to govern his great people? The Lord, of course. With the wisdom that the Lord grants Solomon, he will be able to do so. And with that, because he was so humble in his ask, the Lord is actually granting him beyond, right? He's granting him his wealth, right? He's granting him a long reign. He's granting him success in his partnerships, which we will soon learn. So the tables have turned. The first part of the succession started out rocky, as we remember. It started out a little bit tense, but now Solomon is coming into a place of humility and asking for help, which is the most important thing that we should all do. His first ruling, Solomon, it says, "Now 2 prostitutes came to the king and stood before him. One of them said, 'Pardon me, my lord. This woman and I live in the same house, and I had a baby while she was there with me. The 3rd day after my child was born, this woman also had a baby. We were alone, and there was no one in the house but the 2 of us.'" So the story continues, and an argument erupts between these 2 women. The second woman, who had the baby after the first, she had rolled on her baby during her sleep and had killed the baby. When she found out her son was dead, she switched the babies and made it seem like the woman who had her child living had really lost her child. Very unfortunate. But the 2 were arguing, right? The first one is sure and she's certain. She's like, she switched the babies, I understand what happened. And then the second one was combating her, saying, "No, this baby The dead baby is yours, this baby is mine, okay? So with the wisdom that God grants Solomon, he gives his ruling, which is give the living baby to the first woman, do not kill him, she is the mother. Why he would say this do not kill him part? Because there's a little part in between here. At first, he is using his discernment as a child would, I would say. He kind of, makes a silly decision, right? A silly little remark. He's clearly not serious in this, but this is what he says, and this helps them come to the decision. He says, okay, if you two are arguing and you're not going to come to the agreement, right, why don't you cut the baby in two? You can have one half and you can have the other. Now he watched as he said this, and the woman who reacted with a solemn heart, right, someone who was really mourning that verdict, that was the mother, right? That was the mother. She said, no, keep the child alive. She can have it. It's fine. So that the light bulb went off. He's like, okay, this is clearly the mother, and this is the verdict that really comes out of that. Give the living baby to the first woman. So he uses a little bit of trickery and a little bit of amusement, even though that's not amusing at all. That's a terrible thing to say, Solomon. But no, it solved the case, and it made the purpose very clear between the two of them, so there would be no more disputing. Anyways, we move on. Solomon had 12 district governors over all Israel who supplied provisions for the king and the royal household. Each one had to provide supplies for 1 month in the year. And of course, in the Bible, chapter 4, it does list all of the 12 district governors. We're going to read one name today, which is Jehoshaphat, son of Paruah, in Issachar. Okay, so he comes from the line of Issachar, Jehoshaphat. Anyways, the district governors, each in his month, supplied provisions for King Solomon and all who came to the king's table. They saw that nothing was lacking. So for me, this is a good decision, a good wise ruling on Solomon's part. He spreads out the responsibility, right? He elects governors, 12 district governors, and each of them help supply the temple, and the temple's not built yet, but they supply the temple, they supply the king's reign and the palace with provisions, which is good, right? Everything is fair, everything is orderly. So that was very, very good. We're gonna go in a few minutes.
I'm gonna go now?
Yes, give me a few minutes.
Let me talk, because I'm gonna explain it and make this right.
What, baby, I'm in the middle of live right now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, give me 1 second. About to go in, you guys. Okay. It says here, God gave Solomon wisdom. We have the gym returning back to us. God gave Solomon wisdom and very great insight, and the breadth of understanding as measureless as sand on the seashore. So it's just reiterating here God's gift to Solomon. It was, beyond even, discernment, right? Good rulings. It was great wisdom and insight. And with this great wisdom, kings heard of this and came from everywhere to ask him questions. Solomon wasn't just good at ruling the people and ruling the kingdom. He was very, very good with plants, trees, animals, very, very knowledgeable about all things. So people started to talk. He's like, wow, this child is very smart. This king is very knowledgeable. We should go to him for any advice. So Solomon actually had reached out to one king, Hiram, and he asked him, he's like, listen, I have these trees, or you have these trees in your land. I would like to use them to build the temple of the Lord. Will you help me with your men to cut the trees down, deliver them, and collect the wood? So Hiram heard Solomon's message, and he was greatly pleased and said, Praise be to the Lord, for he has given David a wise son to rule over his great nation. So at the king's command, they removed from the quarry large blocks of high-grade stone to provide a foundation of dressed stone for the temple. The craftsmen of Solomon and Hiram and workers from Byblos cut and prepared the timber and stone for the building of the temple. So with this too, Solomon also agreed to pay everybody under Hiram wages for helping him, and to also provide food and provisions for his temple, and I say temple, but his palace and temple and reign. Okay, so there was a trade, right? He's establishing trade between nations. Previously, Hiram and the township of David, the kingdom of David, they were at war, but now that there is peace, he's starting to collaborate, and he's starting to create even more alliance, which is very good on his part. It says here, in building the temple, only blocks dressed at the quarry were used, and no hammer, chisel, or any other iron tool was heard at the temple site while it was being built. The main hall was 40 cubits long. He placed the cherubim inside the innermost room of the temple with their wings spread out. The wing of one cherubim touched one wall, while the wing of the other touched the other wall, and their wings touched each other in the middle of the room. The foundation of the temple of the Lord was laid in the 4th year in the month of Ziv. So wonderful. Giant cherubs, right? These were actually overlaid with gold. It does say that there. So it also gives you an insight onto the wealth that this kingship has accumulated in a very short period of time. It's saying here the foundation of the temple was laid in the 4th year. So King Solomon is very early in his reign, and he's already established much wealth and alliance so far, especially with having that Pharaoh of Egypt. That was a smart decision on Solomon's part. Another beautiful part is this was established in the month of Ziv. So this is actually midway through April and partly through May. That was considered Ziv at the time, since the months of the Hebrew calendar have been changed, but the month of Ziv had just passed, so I think that is glorious timing. Shows that we're maybe a little bit late in discussing this, but it's all okay. Still close enough, right? Alright, peace, you guys. I covered this well enough. I have my husband. We're going to go ahead and do some things. I appreciate you for listening, and I hope you have a great Friday and a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Talk to you very soon. Bye-bye.